If war, a major missile strike or a serious attack reached a UK city tonight, most people would lose the first hour doing the exact wrong thing. They would panic, they would start doom scrolling, they would jump in the car for no reason. They would ring 10 people at once. They would waste battery, waste fuel, and they would waste the one thing that actually matters in a crisis: time. Because the first hour is where people either create control or create chaos. Welcome back to Charlie Survival. Before we get into it, comment below if you want more practical UK first readiness videos like this. And subscribe if you want to get ahead before most people even realise there's a problem. Now, let me be clear, this video is not fear-mongering, and it's not some Hollywood fantasy where paratroopers land in your street and the whole country turns into a film scene overnight. This is not what it is. This is about something much more real. If a major conflict escalated, if a direct strike happened, if a wider regional war triggered attacks, sabotage, blackouts, panic buying, transport disruption, cyber attacks, or just total confusion in a major city, what would you actually do in the first hour? Because that's the bit nobody talks about properly. Everyone loves talking about gear. Everyone loves talking about bunkers. Everyone loves talking about bug-out vehicles and fantasy scenarios. But when something real happens, the first hour is rarely dramatic. It's messy, it's uncertain, it's loud, it's full of rumours. And usually the people who cope best are not the strongest or the loudest. They're the people who already knew the sequence. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 8 things I would do in the first hour if conflict reached a UK city tonight. Not from a fantasy point of view, from a grounded, practical British preparedness point of view. And if you stay until the end, I'll show you how all of this links into the wider mindset you need if you want to be ready not just for one bad night, but the disruption that follows. 1. Stop the panic before it starts. The first threat is not always the explosion. The first threat is not always the siren. The first threat is not always the attack itself. The first threat is panic. Because the second people hear the words war, attack, missile, blackout, chemical incident, terrorism, or military escalation, most people stop thinking properly. And once emotional takes over, people start making terrible decisions. They drive when they should stay put. They spread rumours when they should verify. They burn through their phone battery when they should preserve it. They leave shelter to go have a look. They make the situation worse. So the very first thing you need to do is bring yourself down. Take one breath, then another. Then ask 3 questions. What has actually happened? How close is it to me? What am I being officially told to do right now? Not what your mate says, not what some random bloke on X says, not what a dramatic headline says. What is actually confirmed? Because in the first hour, good information is survival equipment. If you can stay calm while everyone else is emotionally flooding, you are already ahead of the crowd. 2. Get inside and turn your location into a temporary stronghold. Most people think movement equals safety. It doesn't. If something serious happens outside, sometimes the worst thing you can do is go outside. If there's smoke, debris, uncertainty, civil unrest, follow-on attacks, road blockages, or even just mass confusion, the street becomes a problem very quickly. People assume they'll be safer in the car, but all that really happens is they get trapped in traffic, exposed, low on fuel, and 10 times more stressed than before. So unless your actual building is unsafe, your first move should usually be to get inside and make where you are work for you. Close the doors, close the windows, close curtains if you need to. Get everyone in one place. Take control of your environment. This is why I always say your home is not just where you live. In a crisis, it becomes your first layer of resilience. Even a basic flat or house gives you more than standing exposed outside ever will. It gives you shelter, it gives you warmth, it gives you water access, it gives you gear, it gives you familiarity. And in a real emergency, familiarity is powerful. The first hour is not the hour to become a refugee by choice. The first hour is to turn what you already have into something useful. 3. Lock down your information and power. Your phone in the first hour is not a toy. It is not for entertainment, it is not for arguing online, it is not for endlessly refreshing nonsense. It is for alerts, official updates, maps, quick communication, and preserving awareness. So once you're inside, get your power sorted immediately. Plug your phone into a power bank, lower the brightness, close junk apps, put it in low power mode if needed. Find your torch now, not when the lights go out. Find your radio now, not when the signal drops. This is also the moment to stop random battery drain. In a normal day, people waste battery without even noticing. In a crisis, that same habit can leave you blind by midnight. And information is not just about what you consume, it's about what you ignore, because in the first hour, the internet becomes a psychological weapon. Rumors spread fast, fake screenshots spread fast. Old clips get reposted as new ones. People say it's happening nationwide when they have no clue. So choose your information channels before the stress rises. That means official alerts, trusted radio, local emergency updates, direct communication with people you actually know. Not chaos, not speculation, not addictive panic content. And while we're here, this is a good point to say this. If you want the gear I personally think is most useful for this kind of situation, from power banks to radios, torches, water storage, first aid bits, all the basics, check out my Charlie Survival Amazon kit list in the description. And also, if you want a practical free starting point, download my free blackout checklist from the pinned comment. It's there to help you get the basics sorted before you need them. And anyone who grabs that will also be the first to hear when my upcoming course, the UK Crisis Readiness System, goes live very soon. So if you want to get properly ahead of the curve, that's the place to start. 4. Secure water immediately. People underestimate how fast normal life starts to feel abnormal when water becomes uncertain. Now, maybe the taps stay on, maybe they don't. Maybe pressure drops. Maybe there's contamination. Maybe utilities hold for hours, maybe they don't. You do not want to be making that calculation later when everyone else suddenly has the same idea. So if the situation looks serious, get water sorted early. Fill bottles, fill jugs, fill the kettle, fill pots. If it looks like a bigger disruption, fill the bath for washing and sanitation use. This is not dramatic, it is just smart. Preparedness is often just doing normal things slightly earlier than everyone else. The average person waits until the problem is confirmed. The prepared person acts when the warning signs appear. Water buys you time, and time is what lets you make better decisions later. 5. Grab the essentials that actually matter. If I gave most people 2 minutes to prepare for a possible evacuation later that night, they'd grab the wrong things. They'd start hunting for camping gear. They'd start overthinking survival knives. They'd start grabbing random stuff that feels survival and prepper. But the actual essentials are brutally boring. Your medication, your ID, your bank cards, cash, power charger, power bank, torch, first aid, warm layers, waterproof, proper shoes, keys. That is real life preparedness, because if you suddenly had to move later, what would actually make your night worse? Not lacking a tactical vest. It would be having no meds, dead phone, wet feet, cold hands, no documents, no way to pay, no torch, and no clue where your essentials are. That is why I always tell people your gear should be organised before the emergency, not during it. A crisis punishes disorganisation. And this doesn't have to mean some giant expensive setup. Even one clearly packed drawer, one grab bag, one tote, one box with the right stuff in it can massively reduce chaos. Because when the pressure comes to you, you do not rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your system. 6. Coordinate family before the networks get messy. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming they'll figure it out with family in the moment. No, you won't. Not if the networks are slow, not if people are scared, not if someone is driving, not if everyone starts ringing at once. So in the first hour, your goal is simple communication, short, clear, useful. I'm home, stay where you are. Don't drive yet, keep your phone charged. If we lose contact, go to this location, check on mum. Bring your meds, don't leave until we confirm. That's what real crisis communication sounds like, not essays, not drama, not emotionally spiraling. If you have children, elderly parents, or someone vulnerable in the family, this step matters even more, because confusion multiplies when one person needs extra help. The best families in a crisis are not the toughest families, they're the families that already know the plan. Even something as simple as who do we call first, where do we meet if comms fail, who checks the neighbours, who grabs the documents, who gets the pets. That tiny bit of structure saves a ridiculous amount of stress later. 7. Do not self-evacuate too early. This is the one loads of people get wrong. The second something serious happens, there is always a strong emotional urge to just leave. Let's get out now, let's beat the traffic, let's not wait around, let's go somewhere safer. But if you don't know where you're going, why you're going, what roads are clear, what the actual threat is, or whether the danger is even coming your way, then leaving early can be one of the dumbest things you do, because now you've traded shelter for uncertainty, you've trapped supplies for the road, you've trapped walls for exposure, you've trapped control for movement, and in Britain, movement gets messy fast. Roads clog, petrol stations queue, people make irrational choices. One accident creates another. One rumour changes traffic patterns everywhere. So unless your building is unsafe or you are directly instructed to evacuate, or the threat is obviously moving towards you, your default should be to stay put and prepare properly. A lot of survival is resisting the urge to do something stupid just because doing nothing feels psychologically uncomfortable. Stillness can feel weak, but strategic stillness is strength. 8. Prepare for the second wave, not just the first event. This is where most people stop thinking. They prepare for the bang, they prepare for the aftershock, because the first event might be the strike, the blackout, the sabotage, the attack, the incident. But the second wave is what catches people. It's the fuel queues the next morning, it's the shelves getting cleared, it's the mobile data issues, it's the banking glitches, it's the schools shutting, it's the public fear, it's the bad decisions made by millions of ordinary people all at once. And that second wave can hurt you more than the original event if you're not ready for it. So in the first hour, start thinking beyond tonight. Do we have enough food for a few days? What if the power goes? What if the petrol becomes a problem? What if we need to stay indoors longer than expected? What if shops are chaos tomorrow? What if the internet becomes patchy? What if work, schools, transport or deliveries get disrupted? This is the Charlie survival mindset, not reacting to a headline, not playing soldier, not fantasy prepping, thinking one move ahead of the crowd, because resilience is not about looking hard, it's about reducing friction before the rest of the world feels it. So let's bring this home. If war or major conflict reached a UK city tonight, the first hour would not be about being a hero, it would be about stopping panic, getting under shelter, locking down power and information, securing water, grabbing real essentials, coordinating family, avoiding a stupid evacuation and preparing for the disruption that follows. That is how you turn fear into process, and that is what preparedness really is. It's not paranoia, it's not obsession, it's not living in fear. It is simply refusing to be helpless when normal life suddenly stops being normal. If this video helped, hit like, hype and subscribe, and comment below if you want more videos like this. And if you want the gear I recommend for building out your home readiness properly, check out my Charlie Survival Amazon kit list in the description. And don't forget to download the free blackout checklist from the pinned comment. That's the easiest place to start, and if you grab it, you'll also be the first to hear when my upcoming course, the UK Crisis Readiness System, is released very soon. Now, because of the rise in fuel costs, I made a video all about the top 12 fuel efficient cars to get before prices rise because of their demand. Click it and I'll see you over there.